Ladies and gentlemen, let's cut the crap right away. Life as you know it is a mess. Your phone is buzzing, your email is on fire, your neighbor is yelling at their dog, and somehow, somewhere, someone is posting a picture of their breakfast like it's going to solve world hunger. And here you are, stuck in the middle of all that nonsense, wondering why your life feels like a traffic jam with no exit ramp. Everybody's out there telling you what to do. Follow your dreams, be positive, manifest your destiny, as if chanting some magic words is going to clean up the dumpster fire of your daily existence. The truth is, no one is coming to save you. Not the universe, not karma, not that motivational speaker who seems to live on smoothies and Instagram likes. You are the only person with the power to fix this chaos. And here's the punchline: the way to do it isn't by trying harder to control the world. It's by controlling the one thing you can yourself. Focus on you, and suddenly the mess around you stops looking like a hurricane and starts looking like a puzzle. And yes, puzzles can be solved. But first, you've got to stop paying attention to everything else that isn't you. Personal responsibility is one of those phrases that sounds boring until you actually stop and think about it, which most people don't, because thinking is hard and blaming other people is fun. Everyone loves to blame someone else for their miserable little lives: your boss, your parents, the government, your neighbor's dog, that jerk who cut you off in traffic last week. There's a whole parade of excuses, and every single one of them comes with a built-in excuse to stay exactly where you are. But personal responsibility throws a wrench in that party. It basically says, hey, the world doesn't care about your excuses. You're the one running this circus, so stop pretending someone else is in charge. Here's the kicker: taking responsibility doesn't mean life suddenly becomes perfect. It doesn't mean the universe is going to hand you a golden ticket just because you stop whining. No. It's much nastier than that. It means you have to admit that a lot of the crap in your life exists because of choices you made or failed to make. That's a bitter pill, isn't it? You look around, see a disaster, and the first thing you want to do is point at the nearest scapegoat. But personal responsibility is the adult version of taking off the training wheels suddenly. You're steering, you're pedaling, and yeah, sometimes you fall flat on your face. But here's the secret: falling flat is how you learn to ride. People hate it because it's uncomfortable. It's easier to be a victim, to think the world is out to get you, to claim that life is a cruel joke aimed specifically at you. That's why most people spend their entire lives blaming someone else while quietly hoping for a miracle. Taking personal responsibility, though, is the only real way to get ahead. It's like cleaning your room. You can whine about how messy it is, blame the cat for knocking over your laundry, or you can pick up a broom and start sweeping. The difference is enormous, and the longer you wait, the mess gets worse. Life's exactly the same way. Personal responsibility is also about noticing patterns, not just events. It's not just, oh, I messed up that project. It's, why did I mess up that project? Did you procrastinate? Did you ignore the warning signs? Did you spend more time complaining than working? Owning those decisions, even when they suck, is the only way to change them. And here's where the universe has a little joke for you. When you stop blaming everything else, suddenly things that used to seem random start to make sense. Opportunities show up because you stop sitting on your hands. Problems get solved because you actually do something instead of waiting for a hero to appear. You become the hero of your own story, which is a lot harder than watching someone else be the hero, but way more rewarding. Taking personal responsibility also means owning your emotions. Life is going to throw curveballs, and sometimes it's going to hurt, but blaming other people for your anger, your sadness, your frustration, that's just giving them power over you. The moment you accept that your emotions are yours, that your reactions are your choices, that's when life stops feeling like a storm you can't survive. You still get wet, but you start carrying your own umbrella. And here's the final, deliciously uncomfortable truth. Personal responsibility doesn't come with applause. Nobody is going to congratulate you for finally owning your life. No one is going to hand you a medal for admitting you made a mistake and fixed it. But that's okay, because the reward is real. It's freedom. It's the freedom to stop whining, to stop blaming, and to actually live a life that belongs to you, not to everyone else you were too busy blaming. Inner clarity is one of those things people talk about like it's some mystical enlightenment you have to chase by sitting cross-legged on a mountaintop while humming to yourself. Reality check, it's not mystical, it's not a shortcut, and it sure as hell doesn't come from following some guru on social media. Inner clarity is simple, brutal, and requires one thing most people don't have enough of: honesty with yourself. It's about cutting through the noise, the distractions, the endless parade of shoulds and musts, and finally seeing your life for what it is, not what everyone else tells you it should be. The problem is, most people don't even know what's real anymore. Their minds are like a cluttered attic with half-broken furniture, dusty regrets, and boxes labeled other people's opinions. Inner clarity is about opening the door, stepping inside, and deciding what to throw out. Think about it. Every day, your brain is bombarded with emails, notifications, news updates, celebrity scandals, and random strangers screaming about politics. Meanwhile, your own thoughts, your goals, and your priorities are shoved into a corner like an awkward cousin at a family reunion. Inner clarity is the act of saying, enough. I'm putting myself back in the driver's seat. It's realizing that when your mind is messy, your life is messy. You can't think clearly, you can't make good decisions, and every choice feels like stumbling around in the dark while someone else is controlling the lights. Getting inner clarity also means facing uncomfortable truths about yourself. And that's where the fun begins. You have to admit things you've been avoiding, the bad habits, the procrastination, the relationships that are more like emotional leeches than support systems. Most people don't want to look at themselves that way because it's painful, so they distract themselves with TV, social media, or an endless loop of complaints. Inner clarity is turning off all the noise and looking in the mirror, not the flattering one, but the one that shows every corner, every flaw, every messy part of your life. That's where real progress starts, because once you know what's really there, you can finally decide what to change, what to improve, and what to leave behind. Inner clarity is also about priorities. Once your mind isn't clouded with other people's expectations, suddenly life looks different. You start seeing what really matters versus what society says should matter. You notice how much energy you waste on things that don't serve you, like worrying about someone else's opinion or keeping up with trends you don't even care about. When you focus inward, the path becomes cleaner. Decisions that used to take hours suddenly become obvious. The chaos outside, it doesn't disappear, but it doesn't control you anymore. It's background noise. And you finally have the mental space to move forward without tripping over it. Another key part of inner clarity is learning to quiet your mind, not by meditating 3 hours a day unless you wanna, but by actually choosing what thoughts deserve your attention. Most people let their minds run wild, bouncing from worry to regret to fantasy, never stopping to think, wait a minute, is this useful? Inner clarity is doing that, stopping, observing, and choosing. It's realizing that your mental energy is a finite resource, and spending it on garbage is a waste you can't afford. When inner clarity hits, you start noticing patterns in your life that were invisible before. You see why certain things keep happening, why certain people drain you, and why certain opportunities never reach you. Clarity doesn't solve everything immediately, but it changes how you respond. Instead of reacting blindly, you act deliberately. Instead of panicking, you decide, and suddenly, life isn't just a series of random events. You have a map, even if it's rough, to navigate the chaos. Prioritizing yourself is one of those concepts people nod at and then promptly ignore while they juggle everyone else's problems like a circus performer on a unicycle. Society has made a full-time job out of guilt, tripping people for putting themselves first. Think of others. They say, sacrifice. They say, meanwhile, you're running around like a caffeinated squirrel trying to keep everyone else happy, and your own life is a dumpster fire in the corner. Prioritizing yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. It's realizing that if you're running on empty, everything else you try to do falls apart. You can't pour from an empty cup, and yet people treat self-care like it's some optional luxury instead of the foundation of functioning as a human being. Most people confuse prioritizing themselves with being egotistical or greedy. Oh, she's putting herself first? How awful. Yes, exactly. Stop being awful to yourself by letting everyone else stomp on your time, energy, and sanity. Prioritizing yourself means learning to say no without feeling like a villain. It means realizing that your well-being is not negotiable, and that sometimes the world has to wait while you take care of your own business. It's the simple act of carving out mental, emotional, and physical space in a world that constantly demands more. This is where most people fail. They give and give and give until they're exhausted, resentful, and wondering why life hasn't delivered the miracles they deserve. The truth is, the first miracle has to be taking care of yourself. Everything else comes after. Prioritizing yourself also means being honest about your limits. Most people have this absurd fantasy that they can do everything for everyone without consequences. Newsflash, you can't. You're not a superhero. You're a human being with a brain, emotions, and a body that will eventually revolt if you ignore it long enough. Recognizing your limits doesn't make you weak. It makes you smart. It's the difference between collapsing under the weight of obligations and actually accomplishing something meaningful. Prioritizing yourself is strategic, not selfish. It's like putting on your own oxygen mask before helping the person next to you on a plane. The irony is, if everyone did this, the world would function a lot better because people would be healthier, clearer-headed, and more capable of contributing rather than complaining. Another brutal truth is that prioritizing yourself requires cutting toxic influences out of your life. This is uncomfortable because it usually involves saying no to people you've been conditioned to serve or impress. You realize that some relationships are more like emotional black holes than supportive connections. Prioritizing yourself is deciding you don't need to fill the gaps in someone else's life at the expense of your own. It's about choosing where your energy goes and recognizing that your time is finite. That's scary for a lot of people because they've been taught that being selfless is virtuous even when it's destroying them. In reality, boundaries are the healthiest, most radical form of self-respect. Prioritizing yourself also means investing in your growth, your mental health, your skills, your passions, and yes, your happiness. People act like this is optional or indulgent, but it's not without it. You drift through life, reacting instead of acting, waiting for external circumstances to define your value. When you invest in yourself, suddenly life becomes less about survival and more about direction. You make choices that serve you, and you start noticing that when you operate from a position of strength, clarity, and confidence, other pieces of your life start working better. Opportunities appear. Relationships improve. Decisions get easier. The world doesn't necessarily bend to you, but you bend toward the version of life you actually want. Finally, prioritizing yourself requires consistency. It's not a one-off bubble bath or a sporadic me day. It's a daily commitment to honor your needs, your limits, and your growth. It's stubborn, it's uncomfortable, and it's profoundly liberating. The people who finally understand this stop apologizing for taking care of themselves and start living in a way that actually works, not just for everyone else, but for them. Cutting distractions is one of those things everyone nods at and immediately forgets while their brain scrolls mindlessly through 100 notifications, a dozen news articles, and a million opinions that don't matter. Distractions are like glitter, tiny, annoying, and somehow getting stuck in every crevice of your life. They're seductive too, because they promise excitement, connection, or validation, but in reality, they steal your time, energy, and sanity. If you want your life to fall into place, the first thing you need to do is stop feeding the circus of distractions that makes your brain feel like a carnival ride that never ends. The problem is, most people don't even realize they're drowning in distractions because it feels normal. It's what everyone else is doing, so they think it must be fine. Like stepping and chewing gum because everyone else stepped there first. Distractions come in many forms, and they all have one thing in common. They prevent you from focusing on yourself, your goals, and your clarity. Social media is the obvious culprit. Every app, every feed, every ping is designed to hijack your attention with outrage, gossip, or the illusion of connection. Most people spend hours scrolling while convincing themselves they're staying informed or keeping in touch. In reality, they're letting someone else dictate their emotions, their priorities, and their day. Cutting this distraction isn't just about deleting an app. It's about reclaiming your mind from 1,000 invisible puppeteers who don't care about your life. Then there's the human version of distractions, toxic people, energy vampires, or chronic complainers. These are the folks who call, text, or show up uninvited with their drama, expecting you to participate in it. Most people are too polite, too scared, or too conditioned to say no, so they let these distractions invade their mental space. Cutting them out isn't cruelty, it's self-preservation. You don't have to engage with chaos that doesn't serve you, and the sooner you understand that, the sooner you reclaim time to focus on your own growth. Every minute you waste on someone else's nonsense is a minute stolen from your life, and there's no rewind button. Work, obligations, and responsibilities are another layer of distraction, but unlike social media or toxic people, these can't always be eliminated completely. The trick here is discernment. You focus on what actually moves your life forward and let go of what exists only to fill the hours. Meetings that could be emails, errands that aren't necessary, habits that are outdated, these are all invisible chains keeping you from clarity. Cutting distractions means ruthlessly evaluating your commitments and dropping what doesn't matter, even if it makes other people uncomfortable. Spoiler, most people will be annoyed when you start prioritizing yourself, but that's their problem, not yours. Distractions also hide in your own mind, in the form of overthinking, worry, or regret. People think they're being productive by obsessing over what went wrong, what might go wrong, or what someone else thinks. This is mental clutter, and it's just as toxic as any app or person. Cutting these internal distractions means learning to observe your thoughts without letting them control you. It means training your mind to focus on solutions instead of spinning in circles over problems you can't change. This is uncomfortable work because most of us have been conditioned to feed anxiety and drama like a pet we're ashamed of. When you finally cut the distractions, you realize just how much of your life was being stolen. Time, energy, focus, they're yours again. You notice how your goals, clarity, and priorities suddenly come into view because there's no static clouding them. Life doesn't magically get easier, but you suddenly have the bandwidth to deal with it intelligently instead of reacting to every ping, post, or complaint. Cutting distractions is the ultimate act of reclaiming your brain from the world so that you can actually focus on the one thing that matters most. Yourself. Action over worry is one of those truths that sounds simple but is surprisingly hard for people to actually practice. Most of us are trained to overthink, obsess, and plan endlessly while waiting for the perfect moment that never comes. Worry feels productive, like we're doing something important, but in reality, it's just mental spinning. It's the adult version of pacing back and forth before taking a test, convincing yourself you're preparing while nothing actually changes. Action over worry flips that script, it says. Stop imagining the problem and start moving toward the solution. The moment you replace worry with action, you take back control over a part of your life that was quietly running on autopilot, fueled by fear and hesitation. Worry is seductive because it gives you the illusion of control. You can imagine every disaster, every what if, every terrible outcome. and feel like you're somehow preparing for it. But here's the thing, imagining every worst case scenario doesn't prevent it from happening. In fact, it usually makes you freeze, paralyzed, and unable to do anything useful. Action, even small action, has the opposite effect. It transforms anxiety into momentum. It reminds you that you're not a passive observer of life, you're an active participant. And once you start moving, you notice something strange. Problems that seemed insurmountable start to feel manageable because you're no longer waiting for the perfect solution. You're creating it as you go. Taking action over worry also requires embracing imperfection. Most people wait until they have every piece of information, every skill, and every guarantee before doing anything. And while they wait, life happens without them. Action doesn't require perfection. It requires willingness. It requires deciding that moving forward, even imperfectly, is better than spinning your wheels in fear. Every small step you take builds momentum, and momentum is far more powerful than any amount of anxious thinking. It's like rolling a boulder down a hill. Once it starts moving, it picks up speed and carries you along. Worry alone keeps you standing at the top holding the boulder, sweating and accomplishing nothing. Another thing most people forget is that action creates feedback, while worry creates nothing but tension. When you act, you learn what works, what doesn't, and what needs to change. Worry gives you zero answers, only scenarios of doom. Action gives you clarity. It's a brutal, real-time teacher that doesn't sugarcoat anything. You fail, you succeed, and every attempt tells you something. Worry just makes you tired, anxious, and creatively bankrupt. It's a trap disguised as preparation, a comfort zone dressed up as productivity. Action over worry also reshapes your mindset. People who act even when scared start to notice a pattern. Life tends to align itself around movement. Problems that seemed impossible often solve themselves once you start doing something. Opportunities appear because you're visible, engaged, and responsive instead of frozen in fear. The universe isn't sending magic rewards. It's responding to the fact that you're no longer a passive blob hoping for miracles. You start to see that worry was never useful. It was just a lazy substitute for doing the work. Finally, action over worry is liberating because it breaks the cycle of fear. You stop letting imagined scenarios dictate your life and start letting real choices dictate it. Every step forward chips away at anxiety. Every decision, no matter how small, reinforces that you are in charge. Life doesn't suddenly become stress-free, but your relationship to it changes. Worry stops being a full-time companion, replaced by the energy and confidence that come from doing. Action over worry is the difference between living in a fantasy of disaster and actually shaping a reality that works. Patience and acceptance is one of those ideas that makes people squirm because our culture glorifies speed, hustle, and constant movement like a hamster on an espresso binge. We've been trained to believe that if we're not constantly pushing, rushing, or grinding, we're failing. Patience feels like weakness, like standing still while everyone else runs past you. Acceptance sounds like surrender, like giving up and letting life happen to you instead of taking control. But here's the thing. Patience and acceptance aren't about giving up. They're about understanding the rhythm of reality and working with it instead of against it. It's about realizing that life doesn't bend on command, no matter how loudly you scream at it, and that resisting the natural flow of things only makes your life harder. Patience starts with understanding timing. Most people want results yesterday. They want success, clarity, love, or change to appear on their doorstep like a pizza delivery. Reality doesn't work that way. Things take time. Skills need practice. Relationships need trust. Goals need persistence. Patience is the willingness to keep moving in the right direction without demanding instant perfection. It's realizing that small, consistent effort compounds in ways that frantic, desperate bursts never do. You can't rush the ripening of a fruit, the growth of a skill, or the unfolding of your life. Impatience is a noisy, irritating companion that convinces you the problem is too hard or you're failing when, in fact, you're just on the natural schedule of life. Acceptance is the other side of the coin. It's about recognizing reality for what it is without turning every situation into a personal affront. Life is messy, unpredictable, and often unfair. People get sick, plans fall apart, opportunities vanish. Most people respond with frustration, anger, or self-pity, which is basically emotional quicksand. Acceptance doesn't mean liking everything that happens. It means acknowledging what is true without wasting energy fighting it. Once you accept reality, you stop wasting mental bandwidth on complaining, wishing, or imagining what-ifs and start using that energy for something you can actually control: your actions, your mindset, your response. Patience and acceptance work together like a strange, slightly annoying but brilliant dance. Patience without acceptance becomes frustrated waiting. Acceptance without patience becomes passive resignation. When you cultivate both, you develop the ability to keep moving, keep working, and keep growing, even when life doesn't cooperate. You stop expecting the world to hand you exactly what you want when you want it, and instead, you focus on making the most of what's in front of you while trusting that persistence pays off in ways that aren't always immediately visible. Another crucial part of this is letting go of control. Most of us operate under the illusion that if we push hard enough, plan meticulously enough, or stress enough, we can force life into our preferred shape. That's exhausting and it's a guaranteed path to disappointment. Acceptance is the acknowledgement that you can influence certain things, but the universe, society, and other people have their own agendas. Patience allows you to work within those limits without going insane. When you accept the unpredictability of life and remain patient, you stop reacting impulsively to setbacks and start responding strategically. You notice patterns, recognize opportunities, and make choices that are aligned with your long-term goals instead of your short-term panic. Patience and acceptance also give you perspective. Life is a long, messy process, and the things that seem critical in the moment often fade into insignificance over time. When you develop these qualities, you stop catastrophizing minor setbacks and start appreciating progress. However slow, you stop measuring your worth by immediate outcomes and start measuring it by consistent effort, learning, and resilience. Life doesn't unfold on a schedule convenient to your ego, but with patience and acceptance, you start to see the natural order of things and you work with it instead of fighting it. Finally, patience and acceptance create a quiet confidence. You're no longer frantic, desperate, or reactive. You understand that change in its own time and that your role is to keep moving forward while respecting the process. You stop forcing outcomes. Stop blaming yourself or the world for delays and start trusting that consistent focus on yourself, your growth habits, and choices will align with life's rhythm. When practiced together, patience and acceptance make you untouchable by chaos, resilient to setbacks, and ultimately capable of seeing everything fall into place because you understand that rushing, panicking, or fighting reality never helped anyone.